he always says it's kind of tough making it on that 6.
Yeah.
But that we can talk about 6. Vision range. That's really awful.
We'll give him 1 minute and then we'll jump in.
You the vice chair?
Yeah. I think, yes.
Yeah, you still are.
Question.
You didn't vote for me in the last election.
Yeah. I didn't see your name there, Charlie.
could've
You know I would've.
Wrote me.
You know I would be there. I put signs up for you, Charlie. I think I did put signs up for you. Charlie ran for council years ago, you remember that?
Yeah, I do, clearly.
Just the- Alright, so we have everyone. Okay, we can get started. So motion to call the meeting.
Second.
All in agreement?
Actually, you can't make a motion. I'll make a motion to call
Well,
the
actually,
meeting.
there is no need to make a motion to call the meeting, you just,
But the chair can't make a motion.
no, all you do is call the meeting to order, there's no need for a motion to.
Okay.
And I just want to announce that we're recording, and last night they had a meeting here, and it was very difficult to hear. So if we could try to speak louder, even though it may seem kind of awkward, but
Got it.
just to say.
Comments? I guess I'm the public. Ed Ciccarello, 40 Riverview Road. I haven't been here for a while, but I have certainly an interest in affordable housing. I was on the Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force for a while, and I worked on affordable housing a little bit there. And I know I've been here in the past. I had 2 questions, and I came to support the idea of, I don't know, Charlie, is it on the agenda here, that piece of land off of Maple Street?
For focused area C.
Number 4.
Report on a former I-291 state property.
I'm sorry, do you have the same one I have? Number 4, you said? Here, Ed. Right, here.
Right here.
Oh, up here. Oh, I got it. Here, I got it. Here we go. So I would ask that, first off, if there's a report on it, I hope that committee can connect with Kerry Wood to accept that. I don't want to get ahead of things, I know there's a report, but, so I'll just tell you that's my opinion, that, I'll just leave it at that. And then I have two questions. Well, one question basically, has there been any work in regards to establishing funds for affordable housing? I know that was one of the options that this committee could be pushing, either funds through planning and zoning or the town council. That's a question, and whether you want to answer it now or get back to me, it's up to you. But that's all I have, thank you.
So,
Would you like me to
sure,
talk
please go
about?
ahead.
Right. Concerning I-291, we'll get to that. That has not gone to the council yet, but we've met with Kerry Wood. Tom and I have met with Kerry Wood on that, and I was to talk with Ray today, but we passed in the hall, so that didn't happen, but we'll get into that further. About funding, I know that Jen has been looking at funding sources, and we would have to, she's been looking at grants, and if you want to continue with that later, you can. Talk about that. I know there are ways for collecting fees through either building department or whatever. That hasn't been passed through the town council as of this point in time. So, you know, as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So. That's it.
We are exploring those avenues to, raise money, but, we don't have anything concrete as of now.
I can continue asking questions, is that okay, or?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, what is the next step to doing what you said, a fee, some sort of percentage of a fee from the building permits?
Yeah. But we have to
What's the next step?
buy in first from the building department. Run it by Steve Sokolak and the Department of Community Development Services, buy in from the building department, and then buy in from finance and town manager, and then town council.
So could this commission ask them, is there a way that this commission could connect with them to say, hey, we discuss that? I don't know, I think this commission has to, if you wanted to pursue it, you'd have to, I guess, all agree upon it first, and then you have something in mind to ask them to do.
Yeah, that would be up to this board as an
All right.
advisory board to forward that on.
Okay.
So. They can decide if they want to take that up under any other business for discussion. But,
Mhm.
if they want to, they can make a motion to add it to the agenda and we can talk about it. That's up to.
That's good.
Mhm.
All right.
Shall we, just a suggestion, should we talk about improve or disapprove the minutes from the last two meetings?
Are we done with? You good?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of October 3rd, which we received on November 7th, and I've now reviewed them. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Yes.
So I make a motion that we approve the minutes of October 3rd, 2024.
Second.
Yes.
I abstained because I wasn't there.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
I do not recommend that we review, that we vote on the minutes of November 7th, since I just received them here at the table and I haven't read them. I don't think anybody has.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
I see
moving on.
those minutes. They just get lost in the file.
It's right on the agenda page. continuing on item 4A, housing forum. I know we had a brief discussion on the last meeting, and the question was around, what we really wanna present or have at the housing forum. So, does anybody have any suggestions on who should be called, or most importantly, the area, the topics that we wanna cover?
I did, just so you know, I did reach out to Alan Smith, because I know he was interested in this also, and he could not make the meeting. We talked about that in particular, and one of the things we were talking about first-time home buyers versus renters. And since CHFA is here, CHFA also gets you credit for affordable units if it's a CHFA mortgage. So we talked about CHFA, and they did come to the town council and do a presentation. There was a contact person that I'm aware of, because I reached out to him for that presentation. So they go around and they do these sort of things all the time. But they also have lenders that work with CHFA, and that's on their website. So maybe getting a local lender in. But as we were talking, I said we have to do so with a caveat that we're not endorsing one lender over another. That's not why we're doing this. It's just more to educate people on CHFA programs that they have, and what do first-time home buyers, what do they need to consider in buying a home? Points and closing costs.
Time to own.
Yeah,
For them
but,
to know.
and all that stuff.
CHFA programs, right?
But kind of, instead of it being a sales pitch for a particular lender, it should be neutral, and it has to be clearly stressed. So, that type of thing. What resources are around to buy a home? What assistance? And how can they use these resources, and why would you use these resources? And also, they have programs for renters, like that. We have, through Human Services, renters rebate and things like that. So that would be something. What do they have for renters? Like renters rebate programs and
Paid for by the
Yeah.
town?
yeah, through Human Services. So, what is affordable housing? I don't know if that's something you want to deal with just home buyers, or if you want to deal with renters as well.
My snotty response.
Okay, we can do that,
Uh,
but don't put it that way.
I
We
don't-
just speak up too. Don't put it that way.
Given
Minutes.
the newness of this effort and somewhat fuzzy direction, we're well, what about this and what about that? And it's complex,
Yes, it is.
and it deals with money, generally other people's money.
Yep.
Regulations, not in my backyard stuff. I'd rather continue trying to focus on the things we're talking about. First-time home buyers, they can go to CHFA and figure it out. I don't know
Okay.
if people in town, I think they're quick enough to get it, and I'm not sure about the rental program. I don't think that should be the focus.
Okay.
I
I'm
don't.
just telling you what that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm just
Okay.
telling you my biases. I don't know, the purpose of the housing forum is to tell the town or inform the town on what we're doing, or something that might be helpful to them. I don't know if we're at that point. That would be my position, that we're still trying to figure out how we come out of the primordial pool.
I know that phrase because I use it a lot in my office too, so.
I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
The other aspect, as far as an organization here, I would hate to see us get too dispersed, going in too many different directions. I would like to keep that as narrow as possible to the most likely things that we can accomplish.
Yeah, leading in, not jumping you. Let's keep going until we get to report on the former 291, and then I'm not understanding a whole lot of things that have happened and why they did or they didn't. So let's get to C by going
I have
through.
a question. I don't know if it's appropriate right now, so we can cover it later, but, this is my first time I've been at a board meeting at town level, and it's December. So is there some report that needs to be written and presented to the town to say like what we did this year? Or is there any type of accountability? I mean, we have you here, but are you a liaison? Is there any
I
reporting?
have to, I mean, I provide a monthly report
Okay.
on my doings.
Right.
And what's going on to the town manager,
Yep.
as does everybody here in the building.
Yep.
Um,
So we don't have
So-
to do anything special?
No,
We have our minutes
the only,
and stuff
the only
like that?
thing we have to do is do our meeting schedule for
Yep,
next
which you
year,
did.
which is on the schedule.
Yep.
To talk about, and I'd like
Yep.
to talk about
I
that
have
as
that,
well. But,
Okay, just wondering.
yeah, but that's smart, it's a very good question.
So
I know.
going back to the housing forum, right? I think one of the areas that we can focus on is some of the programs that CHFA has, which a lot of the buyers, when they go to Trudy and aware of, like the time to own, is an example of that. So maybe, some of those programs could help potential buyers who might be on the fences right now, but knowing some of the programs that can help them financially, might be, might just be the thing that they need. I agree with Charles that, covering the renters thing is probably for sometime in the future. But I think this one is more, it's not also like, getting our numbers high on the so-called affordable housing percentage of it. I think it's just making housing or housing ownership more affordable in general, because of some of the programs that CHFA has. From personal experience, like when you go to a private lender, they don't immediately recommend you to CHFA because it comes with, some more rules and, some more rigidness in terms of the terms of the mortgage. But I think what in turn that does is it doesn't let people know what's available with CHFA. I guess part of it is, this general mindset that, it's something related to government, it's gonna be too cumbersome, it's not gonna be useful for me. So the goal would be to kind of, get people to know that that's not the case. There are real programs in place to help first-time home buyers, be interested in purchasing a property or.
I agree with you on that, and there are other random bits of information that are related to affordable housing, ownership or rental, that I would suggest as a topic. And eventually, after all our meanderings and wanderings and discussion, all of which is very positive, and hopefully there's a good outcome from all of that, that we're going to have a page on a website or an advertisement and the rare reminder to say, did you know that you can get XYZ mortgage? Did you know that your landlord has to give you a letter within 21 days when you leave your apartment that tells you the nature of your deposit, any damages, the interest earned? And if they fail to give you that in 21 days, you get twice your deposit back, and no deductions for any damage, plus the interest, plus all the transaction costs to do that. It's a big deal, especially if you know anything about Century Hills. You ever spend any time there?
I did not,
They sue their tenants at a rate of probably 5 to 10 a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you go and you look up that, but there's something called party name inquiry in Connecticut. You can see any law, act, activity, and they do that. And they, the specific example I know of, which is going to court tomorrow, the tenant had 20% rental increases in the last 3 years. And then if you fail on some detail to do something, they hit you with additional fees. In this case, this fellow will come out with an extra $2,000 or something, which you could either put to an apartment or a house or whatever. I think that we, as maybe knowledgeable people about affordable housing, over any other entity in town, would sort of have a duty to do that. Now, the town of Rocky Hill has people who help with housing disputes. What's the name of the committee? The
Fair Rent Commission.
Yeah, which hasn't met in 9 months, so it's not a very.
No, they've been at-
They've been,
Google fair rent agendas.
it wouldn't be 9 months, because I used to
Or 8
attend
months.
those meetings.
So there's someone in this building who works there, and I was suggesting, you should be informing all tenants of apartments in Rocky Hill of this. It's a new law in the last year, in order to do service to people. So I think that there is an aspect of what we do, but I'm not sure if it's a forum at this time. But I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
But I mean, fair rent, I know they have met, and there have been numerous complaints about that apartment complex. There have been litigation.
Okay, so all you people listening to me that I have it right, the Fair Rent Commission canceled their November 12th, they canceled their October 8th, they canceled their September 9th, they canceled their August 12th, they canceled their July 8th, they canceled their May 13th, so they did have a few.
My understanding is that one commission doesn't have a meeting unless they have.
A case.
A case.
That's correct. That's the way, yeah.
Yeah.
I was asked by our town manager to set up a process, as far as their process for complaint processing and timing of, if you have a meeting agenda, like planning and zoning, you have a meeting date and a deadline, and so procedurally stuff, so I did that information for them, and I sat at some of the meetings, but they haven't had complaints formally submitted to them in a while. But they've had people go down to Human Services, who staffs that commission, to talk to them about it. And they give them the paperwork to decide whether or not they.
I would suggest, in reference to a housing forum or housing information, one of the ways that the Fair Rent Commission operates is that if they think the rental rate increase for this geographic area is a number, I'm gonna pick it, 15%. And if someone's had 14% rental rate increases, they're going to say to that town resident, well, we think your rent increase is within the range. And how they arrive at what is a fair level of annual increase in their rent is something I think needs more attention.
Do they have the authority to do that? To tell a landlord that they may or may not increase their rent?
Rocky Hill is one of, not every town in the state of Connecticut. There's a Connecticut law that says either you can go to your town if it's one that has opted to have a fair rent commission, and there's somewhere else you go if your town doesn't have it. Isn't that right, Kim?
Yeah, there's a housing court.
A housing
There's
court.
a housing court.
Okay.
Yeah, and so often, if you look at the testimony that takes place at the Rocky Hill Fair Rent Commission, there's a lot of discussion about physical stuff. Did they fix it? Didn't they? Was it habitable? How not habitable was it? How much should they give you back in your rent? it's very complex, and they have high-performing lawyers and busloads. And, there's a challenging aspect to it. But the number of people who live in apartments in Rocky Hill is very substantial. I don't know, what is it, Kim? Are we 50-50 or?
A little bit over, I think.
And that complex is a very large complex. This is I think there's 600 units or something in the towers. And I don't want to say anything more because this is all public record, but they've sued the town based on public official statements here. If you look at the court cases back and forth against Century Hills, Apartment Owner LLC, there's a lot of issues. The town of Rocky Hill has had, and the Central Connecticut Health District that brought a lot of issues saying, please fix this. And then there's an attempt to do that, and then things have been done to make it more better. But in terms of affordable housing, some people will never have the opportunity to be home buyers or don't want to be. So I think, part of what we may have tangents to should be, how do we help people have affordable housing as tenants? And having them know what their rights are, instead of getting shorted on their deposit 50%, it might be $700, they have the opportunity to get $2,000 because they get back double plus the interest that they were entitled to, and so on. And interest on deposits has gone up a lot since now, CEs and everything's higher.
I think if we bring in CHFA, we were talking a time frame of probably in the spring.
At this point, yeah, spring would be
More
probably-
appropriate.
Yeah.
But that would, I think, go a long way to help people to understand, and also to destigmatize some of these avenues that they have available to them.
What I think, if we're gonna have the housing forum and we're gonna have CHFA, and there may be other federal programs that help, when they say first-time buyer, it's actually broader. I think it also means if you haven't owned a home in a stated time period,
Yes.
even though you technically had been, or actually had been, a first-time buyer in another transaction in another place, that then you are still eligible. A divorced couple, all of a sudden, both parties may be.
Yeah, I'm agreeing
So
with
I
you.
think that's very important, because some
Yeah.
people may select themselves out of it, and then we do a great
Right.
service in pointing it
Right.
out.
I
Basically,
suggest, I'm sorry.
stress on on the definition of who is
Yeah.
a first-time home buyer.
Right, and that, I'm sure every organization, lending organization, has their own requirements.
Right.
An example would be when I was trying to inquire at CHFA about the tiny homes, as you had asked me to do. It's an organization, and then you look it up and they say, well, we have all these lenders. So I picked one on the Silas Dean, and he didn't have any knowledge if CHFA could be useful to someone who wanted a tiny home. CHFA does have programs for manufactured housing,
Right.
but there's a lot of contradictory things about the size. A manufactured home may have to be a certain size, but no, we're focusing on tiny, which is below that. So it may be you're self-excluding away from financing available from CHFA if it's not big. Anybody who could help straighten that out, I think we would be doing them a service.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons, right? Like, there is a lot of information that people don't look at or don't have access to, which we want to kind of, bring it in front of them, which will help them. I mean, the things you mentioned about renters, right? I think that's, like, I, for one, didn't know about the 21-day time limit where a landlord has to either return the deposit or tell them like what was deducted for damages, et cetera, and, you know.
It's all
What
has to be
happened, so-
fully expressed.
So that can definitely be included as part of the forum that we do. But I think that education is something that can happen while, you know, a lot of the other stuff that you're working on is happening.
Yes.
Because this is something that, you know, once somebody knows like, oh, CHFA has this program, they can call somebody and
Go that way.
and go that way. You know, find the information, research like they normally would for a, you know, from a private lender. My only thing is, I think, if we can get people from CHFA rather than any of the lenders that they have, simply because, you know, no matter how much we're gonna try not to kind of, you know, prioritize one lender or two that's gonna show up, it is bound to happen, you know. Somebody's gonna, like, after the forum is over, the guy's gonna be standing outside the door handing out his cards. So if we can avoid that, I think we can make it truly like, you know,
I agree with that point.
non-partial.
Yeah, and somehow we need to get into CHFA, the building or the people bypassing or go speak to a private lender. You know, someone represent, I don't know how we do this. Did Alan do that, or do you know how to reach somebody?
We actually had a
What,
couple
going
of.
and speaking to a private lender?
No, we don't want the private lender.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we have a
well,
couple of people.
I've done that before. when we've
Within
been to the council.
CHFA.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And the other point that you mentioned, brushed on, was the difference between renters or owners. And as far as I'm concerned, this commission should be for everything. There's no difference to me, because we're trying to create affordable housing, and whether it's rented or owned, it's the same thing for us.
Right. So, sorry. How does everybody feel about March as the month where we can have this forum? That gives us about 3 months' time to prepare for it.
You wanna make sure the weather's okay?
March, that's why I suggested
Who
March.
knows?
But yeah, who knows? Or you think April is gonna be a more suitable month?
I think it will depend on how long it takes for a CHFA application to be approved and processed. So March, in my opinion, would be better. It would allow people to establish their lending abilities.
Before the
and-
spring?
And then find the house.
Okay. So Kim, can we, so do we need to pass a motion to,
So we need dates, we need dates.
right, no, but like, do we need to pass a motion or to make sure everybody agrees to having this housing forum in March? And then obviously, yes, you need to look at the dates for the availability of the premises as well as
Yeah, I mean-
the folks from CHFA.
Yep. I mean, it could be something up here, it could be something down in the community center. I mean,
Right. And I think the ultimate date is gonna depend on when we can get the representatives in here.
Correct. But, I mean, when we spoke to them last time and they were here for the town council, you know, they
Yeah.
seem pretty,
cause they're right here. and
they're
that-
right
that
here,
was-
you
that
know,
was one of the
so I
things we
think
talked
3
about.
months
Yeah,
is gonna be enough, you know, lead time for them to, you know, make sure that they are available. I think the more important thing is when we can get
I
the,
agree with that. I don't even think we need a motion as far as the direction we wanna go in. But I'm not sure.
so, no motions required, right? Okay, so, but we are penciled in for March 2025. CHFA. Anything I can do, Kim, to help you with either of these?
no, we'll talk.
Okay. Jen, you were up next with the grants.
Yeah, so, I believe last time I mentioned, there's the Connecticut State Department of Housing website, and it's broken into 3 parts. Housing development programs, housing affordability initiatives, and community development programs. Community development, oh, there's also something specific, I didn't even see
Actually,
this.
can I
Yeah.
make you for one quick
Yeah.
second? This is going back to the housing forum. Is there a way, like, for us to, like, I'm sure the community center, we don't have to pay anything for it, right?
That's correct.
But say if we were to keep some refreshments, is that something that we can
I'll figure that out.
ask somebody to?
I'll figure that out.
Okay. Sorry, Jen.
No problem.
Continue.
So there was the housing development programs, the housing affordability initiatives, community development programs. Community development programs, that's like a larger effort, you know, like putting together a Main Street that is, you know, or nursing facilities diversification program. These are more like specific. These are really not in our wheelhouse for the purposes of what we're doing. So that expression, I hate to use it, but if it's the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken, I can look, and I did. I went down, I didn't go through all these. I went through a lot of them now. If you have a housing development program, everything you want to do, you have to fill out a lot of paperwork and forms and all that. So if you're going to go and ask for money, you need to have your act together as far as what you're going to do. You can't just say, I want money. If you look at the housing affordability initiatives, you might go and come up with this great idea, and then it's a pie in the sky idea. You're not going to have a way of financing it. So what I'm saying is this is really difficult. There are all sorts of ways to obtain money. They all involve a lot of paperwork and research, and that's fine. We're spending a lot of money. I'd expect it, you know, to be that strict. So I think that we just need to have a brief conversation now about which is the right direction for us to go into. So should we look at funding, which has a lot of parameters around it, because if you're going to fund, you need to know exactly what you want and proceed down that path, or should we look at what we want to build, want to do, and then go out and look for the funding? I mean, you kind of should do both at once, but there are 2 different directions here. And I think what happens with a lot of towns, they might have an area that they know they want to do something with. So they're going to look at how to make money. And I guess when I was preparing for tonight's meeting, I was hoping to come in here and say this or this, but it's really a combination. You need to have the space before you start asking for money, and if you have money, you have to be able to prove you're going to use it wisely for.
So,
Well, in talking, like, I know at one of the meetings, we talked about the Housing Authority.
Mhm.
The Housing Authority has applied for grants to upgrade units.
Mhm.
The Housing Authority also has some money for a study, because I mean, if you can have all the lands you want, but if you don't know its capacity, if you don't know
Exactly.
construction costs, you don't know subsurface conditions.
Yep.
You don't know all sorts of things.
'Cause
You
that's
say
all
the
gonna be
wetlands are there.
needed.
I mean,
Yep.
you need all these studies beforehand.
Right.
And that's what initially
Right.
is even worth the effort, because it may not be.
Right. Which
It
is,
may all
yeah.
come out, you know, that it's not worth the effort. But they have money for a study to find out if they can get more units on their property and how, you know, they can beneficially do that. So
You're
they-
talking Willow Street?
Yeah,
Yep.
down there. So, because I know we have the I-291
Mhm. I like that.
issue that we're talking about. Charlie was talking to Kerry Whitting up some maps, and we're trying to find that survey. We have a survey someplace in our department. It went to engineering, where DOT actually drew drew a line on the piece of paper and said, we want this property, and they offered up some other property to the town. The town rejected it at that point. So, that was done on their dime. That was done on their dime, but it doesn't have all the information you would need to actually go ahead and apply for a grant. You know, but one could maybe apply for a grant on, you know, what's the feasibility?
A grant to do
You know,
a feasibility study?
You know, something,
Yeah.
something like that. Is this even worth the effort? But does the town even want to do this? We don't know that yet, so.
So I,
There's a lot to.
yeah, so I felt guilty preparing for this meeting because I'm like, I want to come in and provide a direction, and all I came away with was there are so many things out there, but we need to focus, but it's hard to focus. So,
What-
I mean, can anyone give me feedback as far as certain things?
Well, we also, I mean, the town in the past did
Yeah.
apply for Marine Development Block Grant money
Yeah.
to do down payment assistance, closing cost assistance.
Yeah, that's
you know,
great.
rehab,
Yep.
all this stuff, and it wasn't necessarily for first-time home buyers, but it was people that had to, you know, come in and, you know, I can't afford to buy a home, but I can do, you know, can't pay the closing costs, so I could get and it was a zero interest grant basically to people
Nice.
to provide their closing costs. And then once they purchased a home for rehab, say it required work, they could go and get a zero interest loan to put on a new roof or, you know, make it handicap accessible, so.
So something
but
I
it
would,
is a lot of work.
yeah, something I'd like to do is to go through these in preparation for the next meeting and come back with, if we decide to do this option, they need all the paperwork in by such and such a date, so we know what our deadlines are if we want to apply for money.
I think we need to talk before you
Okay,
get into this.
that's what I
Right.
like, I said I felt
'Cause
so
this is-
guilty
Yeah.
preparing, coming
Yeah.
tonight, like, what
Then
am I?
if you'll permit me to respond to her and transition
Yeah.
to C
Yeah.
and to Tom's efforts in the past. I suggest, in order to answer both your general and specific
Yeah.
grants, is we need a timeline. And the best thing to do is to learn to do this timeline is to have a specific project. I suggest I-291 surplus land because in order to
That's what you had
get,
found, right?
we voted at the last meeting
Talked about.
to move the thing forward.
Right.
And in my ignorance, and you three may know more about it, that I saw Carrie Zepps at the Bob Herring thing here, and she said, well, 4 years ago, I had a deed to convey the land depicted on the plan to the town of Rocky Hill. And I don't know the reason why it didn't happen. So we'll have to find that out. But I think in creating a timeline, part of it is going to be, there'll be a need for a grant to study the specific piece of land.
Yep.
And so when you go to someone and say, I need money to answer questions to the town of Rocky Hill and the Department of Transportation, that we're going to take this state land for a state public purpose, affordable housing, but we need to know where are the utilities, where are the wetlands, and we need to have let's say a surveyor or someone look at the physical things to identify the physical
Yep.
risks and costs. And then at the end of that process, if it looks like there's a probability that a portion of the site that we want to acquire would support X units, then there has to be a decision by someone. Are they going to be single-family mini homes or whatever? Because there's 2 backyards. There's June Circle and I forget the other one on the other side. Sandy Drive. And people may say, well, I don't want a 4-story vessel-type building. But if it's heavily wooded. So there may be a way in which there's 150 feet on each side, there's a meandering, bucolic, it's called Happy Pines Road, and on either side there are single-family detached rental or for sale properties. So that's part of, okay, why do you need the money? We need it to follow the step. And if we can identify that it works, we then need bigger sources. And then it might be a state agency. And my understanding is, and I used to be a commercial real estate appraiser in urban areas, Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, Waterbury. Sometimes the state of Connecticut will say, we'll let you have that.
Yes.
Okay. In a past life, I was a commercial real estate appraiser, and I did work for the DOT. So I've sent an email to Terry Zepwoods asking, I asked about the money, and you, in the minutes of October 7th, said the cost of the property is $450,000. How do you know that?
No, it was less than that, it was about 275.
275, I think.
So, no, so that's incorrect. When me, Tom, and Kim spoke to Carrie Woods, she said, like, you know, this piece of land is available, it needs to be purchased at market price, absent any grants.
Right.
But that's on us, right, whether we can get something. But she's, in her opinion, she said, like, that's close to about $250,000 to $275,000 would cost, like, market rate.
So I believe the legal process for the state of Connecticut is to engage an appraiser for which they have under their roof, or they hire outside vendors to do that. So they come up and they determine it's whatever number you want to use, 250, 450. Then it's somewhere else in the state. They're going to say, there's a request by the town of Rocky Hill for this property to be deeded to Rocky Hill for the purposes of creating affordable housing. And I can't point to where it says it or how, but I think Carrie Zepwoods has a magic wand somewhere in her purse that she would find
I think
for,
so does too.
for us to qualify to get that land for nothing.
Yes.
Now we're moving along. But I don't think you can go and ask that question to be addressed until you get some money for someone. Now, Kim works with a bunch of people up here down in the corner that are licensed surveyors, all kinds of engineers of different types. They know the inland wetlands aspect, they know the zoning aspect, they know where the public utility connections, they know whether it's gravity feed to X, Y, or Z. All of these things go to the cost of the construction risks, okay? So what we want to do is create this timeline, and who's going to fund the different parts. Now, the town officials may say, hey, that's not our job. They got a full-time job before you came up with this crazy idea. So then you have to go to someone like the Connecticut Housing Partnership Program provides incentives to increase the supply of affordable housing, and say, okay, or the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. We have an identified location, state of Connecticut's involved, town of Rocky Hill, and then maybe we go to Bellefonte and we say, all right, we need someone to act as the economic, entrepreneurial glue to bring this together. And they may say, okay, in that timeline, these are the things you need to know. These are the costs that we would anticipate. And these are the costs that we will contribute to you because we're good citizens of the town of Rocky Hill.
Now,
Well, it's kind of like the redevelopment project with the Green at Maple. You're kind of like saying that, okay, it was former I-291 land also. And that was, then
Is it right?
it was like a straw deed that went from the town, it went from the state to
Well,
the
and-
town through.
In Maxwell Park
Yeah,
is
that
right
kind of
there.
thing. It's
But
sort of-
I think you started something good. Now I'm going to be quiet for a minute. How come this didn't go through 4 years ago?
It's in the process. we've, at the last meeting, we voted to have the request sent up to the council. When the council, if they act on it in a positive way, and they may or may not, then they'll send the request to the state, to the Department of Transportation. And this is all my understanding in our conversation with Kerry Wood. The Department of Transportation then will either recertify the old price for it, or else they'll survey it again.
No, I think
and
they
give
have
us
to
a
do,
price.
you always have
Sure,
to do the
and that's
value within X
Yeah.
months.
And that's reasonable. Now, once we get the real number, then we can look at grants. And part of it, in the back of my mind, is Department of Housing. Because in Carrie's conversation, she said maybe DOT will transfer it to DOH and they'll give it to the town.
That would be the ideal solution.
That would be ideal in many ways,
Yeah.
because then they have an investment in it, and they would be more apt to get a grant for the development.
This is what I heard from Carrie today. I had a conversation with her, and she said, all the town needs to do is to email her, to tell her that they want to continue the conveyance.
Well, that's
And-
not up to us, that'd be up to the council, we'll find out.
Is it on the agenda for next month?
It should be, well, I have something over to Ray, hopefully for.
You guys
we've
are
taken
in
our
the
step.
majority, so here's the ball.
You know, we're all on the same team here. We'll, I feel that going after the grant, you're doing a lot of groundwork on the grant work. I think it's great.
Yeah, not enough,
But
but yeah.
I agree, we shouldn't go too far on that until we get a
We know.
number, we know what we're doing, and then we can explore that.
And this is so fluid too.
I agree.
Yeah.
All loans are fluid.
Yeah. Yep,
I bet you, we're gonna start somewhere here, but we're gonna end up
yeah.
at some place we
Right.
don't even know right now.
But you
Right.
know what also happens, which is good, you talk to someone, and this is stuff I did months ago, not for this particular exercise. You talk to someone and they say, oh, do you talk to someone else? Because all these people talk, you know, all these different programs, so.
Well, it's very hard for someone new to enter into the, I'll call it the factory process. But once someone goes through all of that, everybody involved knows that you know, and it goes through. CHFA, almost all of the work they do is with people they've worked with before. And it's just the way it is. I've worked with public housing in Massachusetts, and I've worked in Connecticut with it for a long time. Maybe it's like that in lots of businesses or other parts of government, but it's just everybody prefers to work with someone who understands what they're going through.
I agree. I think a lot of that is trust. You know, you tend to want to work with people you know you can trust who will do what they say they can do. A lot of people have great intentions, but then they can't follow through and make everybody look bad.
Yeah, and that's where I think, I call it the entrepreneurial aspect of it. And, you know, we can sit here monthly and talk about it, but eventually if we want affordable housing to be added somewhere, it's going to be someone who, it's their full-time job. And there are parts of all the different programs where they say they'll offer assistance. But that's really what's absent, is someone who's going to know who to call and when. And that's, again, I think for us, I don't know where we hand this over to someone. If we make a recommendation to the council, are we then out of the loop?
They make their step, and then we're back in the loop.
Hopefully.
Well, I would think that if it's on the agenda next month, the chairperson would attend the meeting, give the opinion of this commission that you support. I'm hearing that you support the conveyance of that 291.
Yeah.
If you haven't written an email already to the town manager, that,
We've already resolved that. We've voted on it, and
So-
we've sent the information up to the town manager through Kim.
okay, so
So
then
it's
they,
done.
they know, and then probably your presence at that meeting, if they have questions, would probably be appropriate,
Yeah.
right?
I'll be more than happy.
And then
Yeah.
the council would have to, for conveyance, and it has to go to 824 through planning and zoning, if they want to purchase it.
But what if it's free?
That's-
What if there's no charge?
We don't know that, but at least investigate it.
So
So-
this, yeah.
Well, the initial conversation was that there will be a charge, it's,
Yeah.
we will have to.
We want them to
purchase
come
the
up with the
market
fair
price.
market
Okay, but-
price,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But that's a possibility.
She tell me
Well,
today?
yes.
Okay, and you
Give it
tell
to the
that
town.
child if they fall down, they
She's-
get up again and
She has the best
do
of
something
intentions.
different.
Let's put it to
And
But it hasn't,
I
it's
don't
not a
think
reality.
someone saying there's a
You got, like,
charge.
too many
should
Oh, no,
deter
that's,
us.
no way is that kind of like stopping us from,
Mhm.
still going for it. I'm just saying, like, our initial conversation was that,
Yeah.
there's gonna be enough.
All of us here live in Rocky Hill and have been here a reasonable amount of time and know different parts. Again, this is an unknown. And when you look at the aerial photo of it, it's very treed, there are single-family homes on either side. It's a desirable location. Maxwell Park is nearby, shopping and all that sort of thing. It looks like there's significant buffers that could be retained and, versus some other options, an office park, an industrial park, whatever. And yeah, there's a million things we don't know when we're talking just because pie in the sky. It's nice hopium. And I think it's great that you're pursuing it, and that somehow, what I always hate about Rocky Hill is that some great idea dies behind a door that we don't get to have a seat at the table. So I don't know, I know we're all on the same team and all of that. Let's not go over why it didn't happen 4 years ago, I have no idea.
Yeah, get it done now.
Yeah, okay.
Better late than never.
Good,
So,
Yeah.
Kim, do you
Good
know
job.
when the next meeting is?
I don't know when it will be.
Okay, so you're gonna let me know.
Yeah, I will let.
Yeah, I always get 'em. I get notifications.
So,
All right.
Okay,
Question 5A, I think, Kim, that's the one.
Oh, action on meeting dates. We typically meet the first Thursday of the month. The agenda, obviously in red, there's some issues with meeting space, the dates in red. One of the thoughts was also, do we want to meet monthly? Do we want to meet every other month and set aside, planning and zoning, for example, they set aside the third, they meet the third Wednesday of every month, and then they set aside the fourth Wednesday as special meetings. So it's a placeholder in the meeting space. And I don't know if that's something you want to do, if you want to do every other month being a special meeting, just in case, if you have business to cover it, or do you want to continue to do monthly meetings?
Personally,
I
I'm in
don't know.
favor of doing monthly meetings,
Okay,
just
okay,
so that we can keep up.
that's fine.
But happy to
Love it.
hear what everybody else's suggestion is, going monthly versus once every 2 months.
I like monthly, and then we could cancel it if we need to.
Okay,
That's another option.
Yep.
okay.
okay.
I know on the January meeting, and it's really tough at this time of year, because there's a lot of time off at this time of year, believe it or not. But it's January 16th, it's a different date. And there was a conflict at the beginning of January.
Actually, one more question I had was, from the first week of the month to maybe the second or the third week of the month.
Doesn't matter to me.
I don't care, whatever, if it works for everybody.
I'm going to have certain months where it's a problem, just because of my other duties with the town.
Third week for me would be tough because I'm planning and zoning that week and most of my time is spent just
Okay.
down with planning and
We can
zoning,
keep
so.
the current schedule.
But there is a conflict, as I said.
On the 16th?
No, this is fine, but I think the first,
Oh, January 9th, you mean?
yeah, there was a problem with the first, because it was like, what was it?
It's the day after it's the day after New Year's.
New Year's. But I think January 16th is fine. Yeah.
So they would have to be in room 1C in the community center. I already kind of gave the IT people the heads up, because remember, it's recorded. So they have to come down and deal with whatever it is they have to deal with to set that up. And those spaces are available, that space is available those times, so. Is the time, I know 6 o'clock might be,
That's
is that
the earliest that
okay?
works for me, unfortunately.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's fine,
Okay.
fine by me.
It's been working. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
fine. So, and we,
So, yeah, monthly, first week, except January, 6 p.m.
could we have a motion on the tentative meeting schedule?
Second.
Well, I'm not.
I'll make a motion that we approve the tentative 2025 meeting schedule as presented to the committee today on December
Fine.
5.
And you were seconding?
Yes.
All right, all in agreement? All right.
I know we had some discussions on planning and zoning commission as far as moving things forward to them. Their agenda for December 18th does show, it's the last item on the agenda, and it does have recommendations from the Affordable Housing Committee, whether it be through the commission meetings or through the plan itself, to have them at least discuss. There was no exact language that this commission came up with for them, so there's no public hearing as of yet. But talking about, in the plan, they talked about addition of affordable housing set-asides in all residential zones with a higher percentage in the town center zoning district where mixed uses are proposed. So this would be discussed at planning and zoning. Do they want a regulation amendment to go forth with that? And if that's the case, it'll be written up and then it will go to them for a public hearing at a subsequent meeting.
Yep.
Okay?
And only the town center zoning.
No, in all residential zones. Set aside. So if you're doing a subdivision, for example, in a residential zone.
All residential zones with a higher percentage, gotcha, in
Yeah.
the town center zoning.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Also modify the definition of accessory apartment, because I noticed in reviewing the ADUs, the accessory apartment definition, while the language for accessory apartments allows for detached units, the definition doesn't specifically have that in there, so I want the consistency there.
So to tie into the current state law.
We have the detached units in the regulations itself.
Already.
Yeah, already, but the definition doesn't specifically say detached in the, yeah. So the current,
I don't have the regulations in front of me, but the current definition in the zoning regulations for apartment accessory, it talks about being in an existing structure?
It says, a second dwelling unit contained within or added onto an existing single-family resident,
But not detached.
not detached. Whereas, that's the definition, but the regulations itself were changed to
Okay, so this is
allow.
modified.
This is more, okay, let's
Bring
get
everything
this.
in line.
Yes.
Okay.
Less ambiguity.
So we already have that ability, it used to be a special permit process, you may recall.
Yeah, that was the
days on
first one.
Planning and zoning, but it used to be a special permit public hearing process to allow for this type of use, now it's not. It's, you meet the regulations, you got it. That's what it is.
There's a specific application that you
It's a
have.
zoning permit. It's administrative, you meet the regulations, we have to sign it. So,
There was, I'm in Dinosaur, I still read the current. But there was this great article on the front page of Connecticut section on the 24th Towns Eye ADUs. And it was great, I highlighted a bunch of stuff, but the big thing here was, what is an ADU, which is what we were just talking about. And then all the other things are kind of obvious, that it's an important thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. But, one of the things they said that is, really common is, above a garage, detached above a garage. And I mean, people do that all the time. They rent them out or have a family member. So we have all these ADUs kind of happening in the background that we just never use the terminology for. But utilizing like garage space, it's an easy thing, And as a realtor, I know that. I've been in, spaces like that.
But we have to always keep in our minds that to get credit for affordable housing units, we're not likely. I mean, we're providing housing, which I think is
Right.
probably the primary thing.
Right.
It won't fall within the definition because it's not going to be 40 years deed
Right.
restricted.
Good point. I forgot that. Yeah, I forgot that.
I do like
That's an important point.
but there is a suggestion about adding the allowance of tiny houses. Now, tiny houses, under the building code, they're regulated by building code as well, and I gave out the section, it's appendix Q. They must meet all building code regulations.
Good.
And I did ask the building official today, is there a separation distance between tiny houses if you're doing a development of them? It's 5 feet, unless they have sprinklers. If they have sprinklers, it's 3 feet, believe it or not.
Oh my
I
God.
walked- Yeah, wow, I was amazed too. I go, really?
You could stick your hand out the window.
You can share, yeah, we did the
Have some
demonstration on
sugar.
sugar. Exactly, we did that today too.
But it could be more than 5.
Yes, but that's the
Hopefully.
minimum, yeah, so it has to be, without, 5 feet.
Yeah, you snore a lot?
So, but the dwelling that is 400 square feet or less in floor area, excluding the lofts, that's a tiny house.
By one definition, yes.
But under the building code, so it has to meet the building code.
Yeah, and it gets to a really complicated
So-
thing about the financing available
Yes.
by government housing. Some says it has to be greater than 600 feet, and that's something I haven't resolved. And I did not speak to the people in Meriden at Caravetta, but I will. Yeah, I think it's something we have to sort of.
Yeah, because because it
If
is.
the federal includes the floor space of the loft, that could be 600.
This says or less in floor area excluding lofts.
Right, for here.
It's being
Yeah.
built.
Yeah.
Good.
Is that the,
Yeah, I was just showing him the tiny homes in Meriden.
oh, yes, yeah.
It's imperfect, but it's housing. I mean, the circumstances which many people all over the world live
Yeah.
aren't what we're used to in our huge suburban
Castles.
I say to people, I'm rich. We feel that way. And the market we may want to serve, maybe they're young, maybe they're elderly, retired, but a 400 square foot piece, it has a value to people, and then so there's a cost. I mean, soon we'll be able to walk into the vessel and get a sense. I think those are, what, 450 for the one-bedrooms? And they're basically connected boxes made somewhere else with one window on the end and one window at the entrance. I guess it's railroad style. So, you know, that'll be interesting for us to see.
Do they have like a skylight or anything to bring in extra lights?
For the hallway, the central connecting hallway is open
It's
because that
outside,
eliminates
basically.
the need for sprinklers.
Right.
It's basically outside
Oh,
with this
okay.
weird kind of fabric. Yeah, it's all brand new technology. It's-
Wow.
I appreciate, by the way, and I'm thanking you.
Well, we don't know if it's gonna pass muster.
No, I know, but number 4 specifically, I think is great. It's for, ask to allow separate utilities.
Oh, yes, to modify the regulations to allow for separate
Right.
utility lines for detached structures.
They presently don't permit it.
Our regulations right now state, under section 3C2(3)(e), accessory apartments shall not be metered separately for utilities or result in more than one additional dwelling unit.
But that's useful for a landlord or
Exactly.
or
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
So,
But it's not a requirement.
that's what I just read you what our current
allow
regulation
for. Right.
is.
We're
And
trying to-
now,
Yeah, no, so I think what, I get your question, like, is somebody who's gonna make an accessory dwelling, does he need?
It's not a shall.
Yeah,
it's
but
a
they
may.
could choose to have, or they can, hopefully they can choose, like, okay, I'm gonna have a separate utility line, I'm gonna rent out the
Because
space.
it gets very expensive. It adds to the cost if you then have to go back to the MDC or whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's, we're just trying to make it more economically feasible for people to add it on and be a landlord.
I think it gives flexibility. It's good.
I mean, there was a time when, I think there's some neighborhoods where accessory dwelling units, when they came in early on, they were not well accepted. They were not well accepted because people were concerned, oh my God, you got people we don't know moving in
Yeah.
and, but I think that has changed. We don't have as many requests though as we did before, which I find interesting. But
Well, I anticipate
like
if
the idea.
we are able to move forward with the
Planning and zoning,
291,
oh,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll probably get some opposition from neighbors, and we'll have to be sensitive to that, too.
No.
I'm sorry.
P and Z?
We're used to opposition. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, not a problem. So these items will be on the discussion. It's unfortunate, but it's at the end of the agenda because we have some interesting items on that agenda. It will
So
be on,
these are on the December 18th meeting, right?
correct. Just, these aren't the actual amendments, these are just discussion purposes.
But.
Because they have to decide, do we want to do this, yes or no? And then when they have a hearing, I would think that this body would go, or at least representatives from this body would
Right.
appear and speak to those items. You may want to give correspondence now to the commission for those items, just as a consideration. They're coming under, it's saying on the agenda to something, recommendations from the Affordable Housing Committee for consideration or something to that effect. And then it's up to them to discuss it and decide, do we want to go forward with it, yes or no? And we'll go from there.
Gotcha.
Do you know the date and time of that meeting?
Oh, it's a very lengthy agenda. I can
Oh,
send it to you.
okay.
It's December 18th.
Yeah. I mean,
You
can you
start
just
at
pop
6 or
in for
7?
part of it?
6:30.
Well,
Well, the meeting's, it's at the end of the agenda.
Okay.
when this item comes
If you walk in late?
up in the P and Z agenda, you as the staff to P and Z, will you make a report to say that, as in your other hat, one of your
Yeah.
other hats, you were the staff to the Affordable Housing Committee, and that in our activities, we've identified these that we think need to move forward as soon as we can. And there's a lot of things evolving and bubbling and so on, but in order to be effective, we think that we should move the process
No,
forward
and
or
keep
something.
in mind, because of state statute where we have to put together regulations, and if it affects something within 500 feet of a town boundary, you have to go to CROG, and that requires a certain lead time for review, so, whatever, so, yeah.
It's a good,
But, I mean, they were the ones that had the affordable housing plan prepared, so they're
P and Z.
P and Z. And this body is serving to implement the plan and to provide recommendations.
They had it prepared to satisfy the town council's obligation to the state or something. That-
It's
Sure, that's true.
municipal obligations. Yeah.
The state, yes.
And then one of the items in the affordable housing plan is to create an affordable housing committee, of which here we are.
Number one.
Right, so item 5C, 2025 Plan of Conservation and Development.
I know there was a question about involvement, and every board and commission will be getting something soon as far as what the POCD is and what it will include. The affordable housing plan, as it presently exists, will be included as part of it. The community resiliency plan, which was completed in August, will be part of it.
The community will.
Resiliency plan. That was, that was done. The Nature Conservancy worked with a core team and several people that they wanted between 20, 24 individuals to work on community resiliency, natural hazards, that type of thing, based upon climate change. So they got people together. I can get you all a copy of that.
Is it online?
Probably not yet. I don't know. But that, I'll check, but I'll get it to everybody here. And that will be included also. Some of the recommendations were one of the biggest ones was an updated drainage study, because the last one was done like in the 60s, late 60s. And the town has changed considerably since the late 60s when I.
Is this a response to Oxford's problem?
This was something that's the whole climate change issue, the whole climate change issue and flooding and everything. But it goes beyond drainage, but that seemed to be the biggest concern with the groups. There were two separate groups working. It was a virtual meeting, two separate groups working in two different chat rooms, and they came up with their priorities for the town. And drainage and flooding and that type of thing, natural issues, cooling centers, shelters, that type of thing. Those were the ones that floated to the top. So that will be part of the POC. So, but we'll be getting something out to all the boards and commissions to participate in public process, in meetings, public hearings for an update. So we did go out to RFP. We had sent there were 5 requests for information. No one responded. The amount of money that we had for a POCD was $50,000 total. No one responded. The amount of money, I like to look on the face. the amount of money that other communities had for their POCD was upwards of 150,000 plus. So that's why it's going to be.
So what's the next step for that?
The next step is going to be, it has to be done in-house. It has to be done in-house. And that's why we're putting together, instead of doing a separate affordable housing chapter, we're taking the existing plan that's 2022 to 2027. And when that needs updating, then the POCD will be updated at the same time, because that's going to be part and parcel of it.
Supplementing your in-house work with the 50 grand for outside people to help you?
There will be some outside people helping.
And again, who has decided not to spend more money? The council?
That's what they gave us. They gave us 20,000, and then they gave us 30,000. Okay. It is.
Wow.
It is.
It's disappointing to me, to be honest.
It's quite the variance between what we're spending versus what other towns spend.
I'm sorry?
There's like a huge gap between what we are spending
That's correct.
versus a lot of the other towns.
That's correct.
But I guess the size of the town would.
No, we're not
Right.
spending it. Well, the request was considerably more. Way back when we requested the money, but that's what they did. Was there a reason for that? I think there was, but we're not going to talk about that right now.
May I ask a question? before we adjourn? Thank you. In the affordable housing plan, in section 3, it talks about preparing for deed-restricted housing, and it says that
I had it here somewhere.
we need to prepare documents so all developments meet the same parameters.
And
So-
last month, we went through an affordable housing plan. The rules and regulations for the affordable housing plan have been slightly modified, and so I have a copy. I didn't bring it with us tonight for the affordable. That's one there's updated information from that one even.
Okay, so this
So
we
that
got
one's-
at the last meeting.
Yes, that was something you got as an example at the last meeting, but now there's updated information that would even update that one further. As far as a sample affordability plan.
Right.
Then you have a fair housing plan that has to be submitted. Then you have a copy of a deed restriction that has to be submitted also.
Those are all the documents that are needed, those 3
Those-
documents?
Yeah, they all have to be filed in land records
Right.
too.
So I guess the point of the affordable housing plan, that section number 3 was that
That's,
we're gonna take this now, this vessel one, and it's gonna be used for Kelson Row.
the attorney,
Well, this one was prepared by Hinckley, Allen, and Snyder,
correct,
who represents Vessel, that lady, I forget.
Andrea Gomes.
Yeah.
Yes. That, the document, the subsequent document for 1093 New Britain Avenue has incorporated newer legislation into it.
That's the Rockamora one?
Correct.
Okay.
Also prepared
Was that
by-
approved?
That was approved with
Okay.
Where is
conditions,
that?
yes. 1093 New Britain Ave.
That's the
Um,
corner of,
Yeah, but,
we call it Snake Road, but it's,
Yeah.
Colby.
okay.
but that has an update to even this one,
Okay.
following
And
legislation.
the nature of the evolution, what are they doing to it to make it more better? Why are they changing?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but.
But probably based on case law or something.
Yeah, but, so there's, and Andrea Gomes basically is like the protege of Tim Hollister. Do you remember Tim Hollister?
No.
He's the one that basically wrote and worked on,
He's the Darth Vader
Of
to
affordable.
planning and zoning commissions. When he comes, they
Not
have
really.
music.
I don't think so, but he's an awesome individual. But he's the affordable housing guru in the state.
Right.
And he's I think he's semi-retired now, if not retired, but, he has models of affordable housing plans, housing affordability plans, fair housing plans, and deed restrictions that many municipalities use for these types of things, so.
So I guess my question still is though that we have other places that have affordable housing and P and Z, when I watch P and Z meetings, I think they're doing a great job saying, hey, could you put one more apartment in there? Victor is great in that respect. So I appreciate that. But is that plan, is that our boilerplate now? Because it says here, prepare documents so all developments meet the same parameters.
Well, the plan itself, the language is gonna essentially be the same.
Okay.
We're gonna use that as a, yeah.
For Kelson Row, for whatever the other.
And I suspect that there's a lot of conflict over affordable housing being done. And there's litigation. And as all things, probably in the world, but certainly in the United States, most of our laws are an outcome of a court decision. And as Vassal, I don't know who did Rockamora use the same law firm, Hinckley Allen and so on.
I would imagine many would.
Yeah, because they're the successors. Darth Vader wins. In that they'll never be as those words are in the plan exactly. It's just not going to happen. I think the spirit of it is true, but and maybe when there's a law change, the others have to then modify their plan to incorporate what's current by the law.
I mean, the
Yeah,
income.
it's understood, yeah, that
Income
makes sense.
is income. I mean, it's based on the,
Yeah, AMI.
yeah, so
Right.
that, and the numbers are punched in. But
And may I ask one last one, and then I won't ask anymore.
No one
I thank-
believes you.
I thank you for allowing me to participate. Has there been any talk about the town administrator of the affordable housing plan?
no,
Okay, so that's, when, I don't, I mean, when do you expect that there's gonna be a need for that?
In the future.
I think the administrator, knowing towns, plural, the administrator will be appointed when the need is there. And we have no need yet.
But we have
Coming soon.
this one here now, so
Coming
that's our
soon.
first, right? And we have Rockamora, that's two.
Well, there's occupancy now
And Kelson Row,
at Kelson Row.
that's,
And there are a few others in town, but I don't know what triggers that to say you have to have it. By the
There's-
adoption of a plan, do you have to?
I mean, there's, like Kelson Row was done without, it's not an 830G, it's in our regulations that we require.
Right.
There are others that were approved with us just asking, saying, we're gonna.
But they're 830G units, they'll be 40-year, deed restricted, require an audit and all of that, no?
830G requires deed restrictions for 40 years. The other ones, not necessarily.
What are
because they're not. We have 2094 Silas Dean, that's Bel Air Circle, it's a private road. We don't have the final plans in yet. I don't know if they're going to go forward, but we asked that, and I have to think, we got 10%. Stepney Place, they're
Right.
constructing units now.
right.
Are they getting some?
I think 11 units, I believe. But they're spreading it out, some of the new units and then some of the existing units. There was a project that I don't believe is going forward, I'm not sure, at the Latazori office building behind Wendy's to convert that to a mixed use with some affordable units there as well. And there's some things on the drawing boards for another location in town, but there's no application yet, so I can't really go there.
On the P and Z for this coming agenda, there is an application for, I think it says apartments at 200 Capitol Boulevard.
Is that the one?
Yeah, where
Is that
One
wetlands?
that's happening now.
Is that
That's at
wetlands?
wetlands, yes,
That's
I'm
at
sorry,
wetlands.
wetlands. And where is 200 Capitol Boulevard?
That's behind the Sheraton, it's on the corner of, Capitol and Enterprise.
Oh.
What, do you know anything about that?
Hasn't been to P and Z yet, but they did a pre-app, they came in with a pre-app. And they asked, the commission asked, as we do in staff meetings prior to getting to the commission, will you be providing affordable units? Anytime anything residential comes in, we ask. And so far, we've gotten something, which is nice.
And all those affordable units, even in those, are deed restricted, and we'll use that affordable plan that we just saw?
Well, this is, that's 830G, those are 830G, but we would want to ask them to be deed restricted.
Didn't you just say that you thought those also should have the same? Or did I misunderstand you?
830G, you have to have a certain percentage, 30% of your units
Right.
have to be deed restricted
And
for.
that permits you
To-
to squash some zoning
Yes,
regulations.
your zoning
Yes.
regulations are kind of like tossed aside.
Yeah, but I
Okay.
guess
Health
that,
and safety.
I guess if you're not asking for something that deviates from the minimum of the zoning regulations, you could still have affordable units, correct?
That's correct.
I'm not sure what the motivation is to do it.
Well,
Good
we as
citizen
staff are
being-
really asking, we as staff are really pushing for it, and then telling these people that when you go before the commission, I guarantee you they will be asking you for affordable units.
10% at
And-
least.
And sure
Yeah.
enough, they do.
But as a group
But they
here,
don't have to
we
do
may
it,
have talked
but-
about it. I suggest,
That's why.
Kim, that maybe you speak to Stuart Topliff, the town assessor, to see how he would reduce the assessed value of an apartment complex, and for this example, let's say there are 200 units, and 20 are designated affordable, but not under 8-G or whatever it is. And because apartments are valued based on income, so in speaking to an applicant who comes before you and trying to persuade them, you're kind of like the first place an applicant comes to say that it's part of public policy. Well, first of all, by the numbers, they should have a lower assessment, but maybe we try to get the town council at some time to say, if we're trying to encourage the town of Rocky Hill, or not encourage, or trying to get to the 10% units that meet affordable housing by being dedicated, we have to, and in fact, do what was done at Kelson Row. You're buying something. You're putting a reduced real estate tax obligation in order to get something. At Kelson Row, they wanted it to be developed, so they gave them a tax abatement for X years. So if we want to have other apartment developers come here, we may say, for every affordable unit that you add, that you're not forced to add, not only will the assessor look at it in a pure dollars and cents, but we will say to the assessor, for those units, give them a X percent, I don't know what it would be.
It's a
Five-
it's a nice incentive. It's a nice
5%
incentive.
bonus, or whatever
Yeah,
the word
sure.
is. And that may help us. I'm not saying it's going to, but I think, again, you once talked about, well, how do you go to a developer? I think you have to give them something. Yeah,
Well,
and
yes.
dollars is the most, something most developers want.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. So theoretically, if we ever get to the 10%, then maybe we don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
Well, there is legislation being, and activities being worked on to kind of regionalize this affordable housing 10% issue.
Regionalize it.
As far as taking a look at regional planning zones, like we have now, Capital Region Council of Governments, Lower Connecticut River Council of Governments, each planning region to be assigned, you're assigned so many units. The region is assigned so many units. And then that region, like for example, CROG, Capital Region Council of Governments, in our region would say, okay, what are the towns in our region? Well, let's see. Has Hartford done its share? Has New Britain done its share? Oh, okay, so what's left? Okay, these are the number of units this region needs to create over so many years, whatever. So let's see, okay, Rocky Hill, where are you?
Below 2%.
You know, where are you with your percentage
We're not at
versus?
Well, if you don't include the Elm Apartments, we're in the
You know,
twos.
Where is Weathersfield versus, versus where is Cromwell, you know what I mean? And then assign number of units to these towns on a regional level.
I don't understand the signed numbers of units.
Okay, well, 10%, basically the state is supposed to have 10%.
Uniformly across the land.
Yeah, well, they're gonna, I mean,
168.
For us-
some
for us-
towns don't wanna do it.
For us, it should be 900 dwellings.
I've sat at meetings where there's some shoreline towns that have said, well, we have 2-acre zoning. We're not doing this. We
Well,
can't
they
do
send
this.
us
We
one.
have two, you know.
This is like
And-
buying
and it's
someone to
like-
be, instead of being drafted, we're gonna give you this Irish guy who just came over, and he'll go in and he'll take my son's place.
Well, no, but they want to divide the state up, they're looking at dividing the state up by planning region and assigning number of units to a planning region based upon what you already have. And say, okay, maybe you don't need as many, maybe you don't need to do your 10%.
Fairfield doesn't, they want Bridgeport bad.
I used to work for Bridgeport, so.
I know that.
Yeah, I know.
Is that NOL guy still there? What was his name? The planner. Beginning with an NO at the end. The planner.
Nido,
Nido.
when he retired. He was there when I was there.
My feeling with the regional planning is that it sounds great, except that they use the carrot and the stick approach, and they always forget the carrot. So, they come in and they try to bludgeon our communities to do whatever they want, and they're taking authority over these communities. And I find that distasteful.
That's what they're working on now, just so you know.
Sure, well,
Just-
I can't change the world, I
Yeah.
know that.
I think we have a wonderful opportunity with Carrie Zepp being supportive. It's a piece of land we know.
Right.
We need to know more about it.
Maybe the housing authority should get involved too.
Well, okay.
I don't know.
At the last, this is way on the side, at the last council meeting, it was announced that the NDC is going to charge every house a $10.08 fee each month for a water connection. It's an additional fee. And Stuart told me we have in that category, 6696, so that means the water company's getting another $800,000 a year out of our community.
For what?
Water connection.
Water connection fee.
But to be used for what?
I don't
Water
know.
connection.
Yeah.
Is it one of those things similar to Eversource with
Yes.
their
Except they're not
Public
promising to do
benefit.
anything
public
with it.
benefit?
Yeah,
It
Yeah,
could be,
is it covered in one of those?
could be
Yeah.
anything.
yeah, they're gonna kill the golden goose with all that.
Where I find that objectionable is because here we are, we're trying to make things affordable. And there's always winds coming down that are pushing against us.
Yeah, there may be political, but I'd be willing, you know, we have, who's our rep to the MDC now, do we know?
Dimple.
Dimple. Well, you have to get Dimple by his dimples and,
Who used
speak
to
to
work
him.
for the Department of Housing?
I know that, but
Department
for,
of Affordable Housing.
for public policy, they should make some exception if we're gonna have deed restricted units for 40 years and that there's gotta be some way to say not everybody's the same. Is that adopted or is it proposed?
I understand it's adopted. It was told it is here.
That sounds like an Ask Dimple question.
Yeah.
That's
Kim, could you
reasonable.
send me the affordable housing thing for Vessel? That's a public document, right? That Charlie had, sort of the boilerplate thing. Are you gonna give it to me?
Yeah.
What if I don't want paper? Can you send me a
Then
digital?
I'll ask Wayne to scan it.
Will you send it? You have a digital copy of that, I'm sure.
Before I forget, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
One more question.
Second.
They're coming back.
All in agreement?
Well,
Because-
notice what I wrote
Oh,
right
I
here.
know, I'm concerned. Yeah,
Yeah, hope she's okay.
yeah.